If you found this podcast, chances are you're a high achiever and you're successful. But now you're stuck and stressed, and you realize that everything you've created hasn't given you the fulfillment and the joy you thought it would. This is where we discuss the keys of high performance mindset and stepping into the next best version of yourself. Welcome to the Positive Persistence Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast, where we bring you stories to inspire you and strategies to help you tap into your greatest potential and step into your best self. I am joined today by Coach Jaime Elizondo. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Ian, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to see your awesome smile again. And so thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. And for our listeners and viewers, just so you guys know, Jaime and I were actually in a performance coaching program last year, which is how we met. And after learning more about Jaime's background and his character, I knew that I had to invite him on the show. So Jaime, once again, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah. And Ian, thank you for the kind words. And I knew when we met back in that program that there was going to be some synergy between the two of us. And we come from somewhat similar backgrounds. So I'm excited for this conversation, excited to be here today.
Awesome. Now, Jaime, you have been a football coach for over 25 years. And your experience spans coaching high school, college, NFL, XFL, the Canadian Football League, where you won the CFL championship. And now you're a high performance coach, an international speaker, a consultant, and you specialize in leadership, communication, and culture. And now, of course, we have a new title to add, and that is author. So can you give us the title of your brand new book?
Yeah, thank you. I love that intro, Ian. And I need to hire you as my public relations guy. You got me pumped up as you were saying all those things. So thank you for the kind words. The Crush It Formula is the name of the book, and it came out back in April, and I'm really excited to share that. It was a long process, and there's a history to it, and but it's a framework, and I'm excited for everybody to hopefully dive into it.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on that Crush It formula today, so we can let our listeners and viewers know a little bit more about it, because I know that it offers valuable insights to like leadership and personal development. Correct?
Yeah, you got it, Ian. And with a focus on that personal growth and leadership, but more so it's a tool, and we'll dive into it a little bit later. Like you said, a tool that you can take and apply in other areas of your life.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. So Jaime, I would love to just break down your background a little bit in this way, and asking you what got you interested in coaching football in the first place. Obviously, you spent, a lot of years, a couple of decades coaching football, and I know it's still a big part of your life. And when I ask this question, I do it with obviously knowing you had a love for the game. All right. But what took you from playing the sport, watching the sport, to actually wanting to coach the sport?
It's such a great question. Part of the answer starts, I grew up in Texas. And so Texas football is a way of life from when you're 5 years old on, right? Yeah. That's where the roots were ingrained. And unfortunately, I'll alienate a bunch of your listeners by saying I grew up a Cowboys fan, and but that wasn't by choice. Again, that was ingrained early.
Yeah.
And my football career was brief. I got hurt in high school. I had surgery on my stomach, and I was told I couldn't play a contact sport again. And so I actually ended up picking up a tennis racket and was way better at tennis than I was at football. I ended up playing professionally, in tennis, but the love for football was always there. And I found myself back in, the early 2000s, finishing up my law degree, and just, with a daunting, kind of view of I'm going to head into law, and this feeling in my pit of my stomach has just said, that's not what I want to do. I'm meant to coach people. And so to be honest with you, on the journey, I was dating a girl at the time, and she said, Jaime, why don't you just go coach football? Your face lights up, your energy lights up, just go do it. And so lo and behold, a year later, I turned down a bunch of offers in some law firms to go, and these were good offers back at the time, starting at $150,000 in the early 2000s. to go make $12,500 coaching at the College of William and Mary and as a tight ends coach. And that's where my journey started. But I think it was the love for helping, one, the love for the game, but more so the love for coaching and really impacting and helping transform people to enable them to reach their highest level of potential. You know, because we have so much ability inside of us. And it always fascinated me from an early age what separated the elite, the best of the best, right? How so many people and players had high potential, but those few that separated to that elite level of performance consistently over a prolonged period of time. And so that's where I knew I wanted to make my mark.
I find it amazing that you went from a professional tennis player into studying law, having law offers, but something other than your girlfriend at the time was pulling at your heart. The universe was poking you and saying, Jamie, this is what you should be doing. And you listened. And I think there's so many people out there that don't listen, right? That the door may be in front of them, but they choose not to walk through it. They choose not to even jiggle the handle just to see what if. And they stay in the lane that they're in, and they find themselves decades down the road unhappy, playing the what if game and having that regret. But you didn't do that. You decided to take a risk and a more than a sizable pay cut and follow your dream. And now it's led you on a totally different journey to where you are now. So I commend you for having the courage just to go after it. So that's awesome. I love that. And I hope that our listeners and viewers can read between the lines and kind of peel away a lesson from that in terms of, you know, sometimes you just got to go with your gut and give it a shot, see what happens.
And thank you for that, Ian. And I think you used the key word. It starts with courage, right? Courage to say, what do I truly want? And courage to take action. Because I think what happens for a lot of us is, and it could have happened to me very easily, I could have said, well, let me start in law. Let me feel this out for a couple years. And if I had done that, I probably would have gotten married to the lifestyle, the finances, and then found myself years down the road saying, man, I always wanted to coach football. But now I have a house, I have the nice cars, I have a family, I can't do it. And so I think it's also honoring those gut instincts when you know that your heart is set on something else and taking action and not delaying that action. Because it's in that delay that we lose, that we create that division inside of us. Or, you know, and there's a great expression, it's doubt causes delay, and that delay causes that division inside of us. And so I was fortunate. I had some great mentors at the time and some people and support a family to just say, fine, this is what you want to go do it.
Yeah. What was that again? Doubt causes delay. Delay causes division.
Yeah, it doubt creates a delay in us. We delay taking action. We delay having a conversation with somebody that we have to. We delay, following up on our dreams. And when we delay, it creates a division or a divide inside of us because we know we're not acting in our best interest. We know we're not congruent with our dreams. We know we're not stepping out in the way that we should. And so, unfortunately, there's some other things that come after divide, and that is, being discouraged, and then disappointed, and then obviously depression. So there's a whole nother layer, but it starts with doubt. Doubt causes that delay. And so that's where I focused a lot of my attention in coaching and eradicating that doubt so that we can take action.
Yeah. And I know that sometimes that doubt comes from within. We doubt ourselves because we have self-limiting beliefs and we have the wrong mindset. But at other times, we have doubt that enters in our lives because we have situations that are out of our control that happen to us. Or we may have bought in to someone else's perception of us, which then affects our mindset. So I want to talk to you about how, because I know that you coach about this and you talk about this, and that is about how you can build resiliency in your life. So when that doubt comes because of whatever roadblock is in front of you, whatever obstacle is in front of you, and that doubt begins to creep in and you think, I can't do this, or how am I going to do this, or I want to become this, but I don't know, I don't have what it takes. How do you build that resilience so you can have the confidence and be able to, no pun intended, crush the doubt?
Yeah, it's such a great question. It starts with our identity, because you said, you mentioned this as you were phrasing it. Our identity is initially in life, it's not the one that we choose, it's given to us. And especially in those formative years, 0 to 7, 0 to 10, our identity is handed to us. Hey, Ian, sit still, don't talk so loud. Why can't you be like your brother? Why can't you be like your sister?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that identity stays with a lot of us into our teens, our 20s, our 30s, sometimes even our 40s. And there's some people that just never break free of that identity, that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy enough, that I should just be happy with what I've been given. But at some point, it's our job to craft our own identity, to choose what that identity is going to be. And that goes hand in hand with mindset. And mindset is everything. It's a mindset about how we see ourselves, our growth. And as you know, because you coach in this space a lot, mindset is everything.
Absolutely.
And so we talk, you have a mindset on finances, you have a mindset on growth, and so as we talk about shifting our mindset, it does come down to resilience. And what I mean by that is, I thought I was pretty resilient as a football coach. Look, we lose all the time. We get criticized. The world can see if we failed or we were successful. As a head coach in the Canadian Football League, and as an offensive coordinator most of my career, I had to weather that storm. Why did we call that play? What are we doing? And so I thought I was pretty resilient. Then COVID hit, like for a lot of us. And I found myself, the XFL shut down. There were no jobs in football. And so I had to take my wife and my daughter back to Canada, because they were from Canada, drop them off at the border, not knowing when I would see them again. We were closed borders, and I had to go out to San Diego and start my career as a financial advisor at Northwestern Mutual, an area I knew nothing about, Ian. And what I learned over the next couple of years was that resilience isn't just the ability to fall down, endure challenges, rise up, and bounce forward. It's deeper than that. And so when I worked through my certificate on applied positive psychology, I found that there's really 7 areas of resilience. And this is detailed in the book and in the program. And those 7 areas, we might be better at some than others, but those areas are emotional regulation, our ability to control our emotions, impulse control, optimism, self-efficacy, the belief that we will figure things out on our own, right? Empathy is a huge one. Reaching out, our ability to reach out to others when we not only for when we need help, but just to build a community around us. And then the last one is this thing called cause and effect, or causal analysis. If we understand why certain things happened in our life, the cause of that and the effect of that. And here's what I found after going through this. I was really good in a couple areas, but I was really weak in a lot of other areas of resilience. So for me, beginning to understand that there's more than just the ability to rise up and endure challenges, but that there's actually components to resilience was really helpful for me to then intentionally craft a plan to become more resilient in those areas that I was lacking.
Wow. I wasn't aware that there were so many levels of resilience, and I consider myself being a pretty resilient person, having gone through the things that I've gone through in my life, but not knowing that there are so many different types, I guess you could say, and different, like you said, levels of resilience. But I love the fact that how you were defining resilience was the ability to bounce forward. I love that, because most people talk about bouncing back.
Yeah.
And that right there speaks to mindset is everything, and how you
Yeah.
have to watch what you say because words matter. And if we can start priming ourselves, even from the jump, and understanding that I'm going to bounce forward, not backwards,
Yeah.
that sets the stage. It's little things like that, little tweaks like that, I think, that make a big difference that people don't realize. But I love how you broke that down, and you talk about how from, I guess, our greatest challenges that actually forge some of our strongest qualities. Is that something you would agree with?
Absolutely. And I'll add one thing to the resilient quotient, which is what it's called. You can actually take an assessment on it to find out what area of resilience, those areas that I described. You can find out where you lie. It's a true assessment, so you get a better gauge. But yes, to answer your question, I think it's how we approach challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two things that I talk a lot about in resilience. One, are you embracing the journey? Right? Are you honoring the struggle? Because look, we all struggle. You struggled. You're a prime example. Did you embrace the struggle when you were going through it? Did you honor it knowing that it was making you? Because so much of resilience is people can be adverse to that challenge. I don't want to have to go through that. This is too, rather than embracing it and knowing that this is the way that we get to the next level.
Yeah.
And the other way, and it's a very simple tool, and I know you're familiar with it, the ability to say, I get to, rather than I have to. That power, there's two words that are so powerful, get and yet. I haven't spoken in front of 20,000 people yet.
Right.
And that's how we begin to cultivate that resilience muscle, because we shift our mindset just a little bit. And you said something earlier in this conversation that I think is so important to understanding resilience. Resilience is about adaptability and recoverability. Mm-hmm. And when I'm working with clients one-on-one, Ian, I share this all the time. And I'm fortunate to work with some Fortune 500 C-suite executives. And it's not that those players that, whether they're elite athletes like Tom Brady or Drew Brees, or your high-level CEOs, it's not that they have any fewer doubts or that they struggle with their level of resilience. They have the same problems we do. They just work through them faster. They see them coming. They adapt faster. They work through them faster. And when they do have setbacks, they recover faster. And that's what separates the elite level of performance. They still have the same doubts we do. They still have the same fears and limiting beliefs. They just navigate them better.
That navigation process, let's call it, do you find that is the key of how you help explain this to your audience and your clients, of how to turn their setbacks into comebacks?
Yes, absolutely. But it starts a little bit before that with understanding, and I know you know the two terms, but it taps into the mindset. Where do I have a fixed mindset? Where do I have a growth mindset? That's a starting point. But to say that there's only two, you're either fixed or you're growth, is actually a fixed mindset in itself. So there's this fantastic tool called the mindset continuum. And it really looks at levels and layers between, I have a fixed mindset, I have a low growth mindset, I have a mixed mindset, I have a growth mindset, and I have a high growth mindset. And really, when you start looking at the different areas, criticism, how I view challenges, how I accept feedback, what are my life views? And you start to uncover, I have a little bit more of a fixed mindset than I thought. I think that's the starting point, is understanding where you're really operating from, where you're a little bit more low growth or more fixed mindset, where you might have a mixed mindset, and where you really have a high growth mindset. I think it starts with that understanding that there is a continuum and it's not either or in resilience.
It's time to ask yourself, when was the last time you prioritized you? Did you know that research shows that nearly 85% of high performers struggle to maintain a performance mindset while juggling the demands of work and personal life? Those who actively prioritize their performance mindset and personal growth are 30% more likely to achieve their goals in business and life. If you're feeling crippling stress and anxiety, or if you're feeling guilty when you take a moment for yourself, or if you're stuck in the grind and feeling burnt out, you're not alone. Many of us yearn for more, but struggle with the fear of being judged or feeling selfish. And you want to step into the next best version of yourself. That's why I created the Rinse Method, which got me from paraplegic to marathon runner. Backed by science-based proven strategies and now customized for high performers like you. If you're stuck and stressed and want clear steps that you can implement today to move forward, make sure you visit thepositivepersistence.com to download our free Rinse PDF. Wow, I love that. Because I truly believe that there is the realm of possibilities out there, and it is endless. And that speaks directly to that fact that there isn't just the fixed or the growth, but there are so many different, if you want to call them, dimensions in between those 2 points that you can actually match mindset wise, vibrational wise, energy wise, and you can actually work your way through those to get to the point to where you want to be. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. And even one category is on how I see challenge. You know, do I like easy challenges that I know I'm going to be successful in? You know, do I can endure longer challenges knowing that the outcome is going to be in my favor? Or no, give me any challenge. I am invigorated by challenge, right? And that's more of a high growth mindset around challenge. And so I love the fact that there's a continuum that you can actually use to better gauge yourself, because in football and in companies that I work with now, and you've encountered this, you walk into a place and they say, well, that's just the way we do it here.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay.
The way it's always been.
Yeah,
right.
That's a fixed mindset. How can we shift you? So, but I love talking about resilience, and that's where I think you and I connected early on in this, because I just have immense respect for everything that you did and everything that you overcame to get to the level that you're at. And I love the fact that you're sharing your journey and your story with the world.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate your kind words as always. I want to touch on how you emphasize the importance of mental toughness and adaptive thinking. Now, I think that if you were to say those 2 words or those 2 phrases and then also connect football to that, people they say that's a no-brainer. Yes, you have to have mental toughness and adaptive thinking when you play football. But when we're talking about leadership and specifically self-leadership, just in life in general, and stepping into that next best version of yourself and tapping in to your potential. And this may get into some of the crush it principles and the ICE method, but how do you explain or describe the importance of mental toughness and adaptive thinking?
Yeah, it's such a powerful question. For me, mental toughness fits into the discipline section, and not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the I in crush it stands for internal discipline. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, look, there's always hard things that we have to do. Am I willing to, Nick Saban said it best. There's something here that I don't want to do, but I have to do. Can I make myself do it? But there's something over here that I don't want to do. I'd rather do that. Can I refrain from doing what I want to do, knowing that it's bad for me, and do what I need to do? And so for me, mental toughness, and I love the word that you used, I craft it a little different. It's all about learning to develop self-trust. And I think mental toughness is directly related to resilience, because if I'm willing to do the things that I don't want to do, like get up every morning at 5 a.m. to go to the gym, then I begin to develop this self-trust in myself. And that self-trust, the ability that I'm going to figure out that I can do it, that I can persevere, really comes into place when life throws you a curveball. When that arrow comes out of left field that you weren't expecting. There's a deep sense inside people that have great mental toughness of, I trust that I will figure it out, because they develop the ability to trust themselves over time to do the things that they don't want to do. And that's how a component of mental toughness. But I think it's so important to how we navigate those adversities that hit us. And just that deep-seated belief, like, I don't know what's next, but I know I'm going to figure it out, because I've been building this self-trust over the years by by being disciplined, by being mentally tough, and by doing the things that are hard and difficult. And I think that's how those components sort of fit in together.
Yeah, I love that. And that speaks directly to something that I talk about in terms of the rinse method that I coach on. And that's the R in rinse is remember.
Mm.
It is remembering that we have been in this situation before. It might have been a different season, may have been a different situation, may have been a different environment, but we've been in that situation before where we've been up against it. We have, throw another acronym out there, FIO. We figured it out.
Yeah.
Right. And if we look back on our lives, we've done this time and time again in big situations and little ones. But I think people forget the small ones. And they forget that those small wins stack up into big ones. But if they really pay attention to some of the things that they've been through and some of the things that they've been able to conquer, they will remember that they've had the mental toughness before. And that, again, that builds on what you call, I believe, is self-trust.
Mm-hmm.
Trusting that, well, man, okay, I'm in another tough spot, but I've been here before and I'll be able to figure it out.
And I love that. And I'm so curious to hear the rest of the rinse method as we continue to talk. But it's what I love about that is that's really the essence of a good coach. Not only do they challenge you, but coaching one-on-one is really all about a self-discovery process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me telling you what to do because you are human nature. Nobody wants to do what other people tell you to do.
Right. Yeah.
And so that rinse method is, yes, remember the time that you were mentally tough. Remember, take me to a time where you had courage. Take me to a time where you had great clarity in your life. How did you get that clarity? How did you generate that courage? How did you work through that mental toughness to pull that back out of ourselves? Because it goes to what you and I both believe. Every single one of us has everything we need inside of us to reach that next level.
Yes.
And that is a mindset more than anything else. So I'll love that. And with your permission, I'm opening, we're launching the Coaches Locker Room, which is a program designed for football coaches. And I'd love for you to come in and share that rinse method with them. I
would be honored, Jamie. Thank you for the invite. Yes, absolutely. Man, you got me all fired up now, Jamie. I can talk about all kinds of stuff, but I want to get back to talking about, you have your Elizondo Elite Coaching Academy, you have your Mental Performance Mastery Program, but these things are built off of two things that you talk about quite frequently, and that is your crush it principle and your ICE method. And I was hoping that you could share that with our viewers and our listeners because there is gold inside those principles and methods.
Oh, I appreciate that, Ian. Crush it actually began in that story I was telling you on the journey to shift from law school to William and Mary. I was going down to interview at the College of William and Mary, and a friend of mine just said, you're going to crush it. And I thought to myself, okay, I've heard that term and didn't think much about it. But fast forward to November 27th, 2016, and I'm the offensive coordinator for the Ottawa Red Blacks, and it's the site of the 104th CFL Grey Cup Championship. And for those of you that don't know, the Grey Cup is the equivalent of the Super Bowl down here. And it's about 2.5 hours before the game, and I thought to myself, this is what it means to crush it. We are about to win a championship tonight. And Ian, we were massive underdogs against the team, the Calgary Stampeders, who had the best record in CFL history in 104 years. And so 2.5 hours before the game, I'm walking around and I'm thinking, this is going to be, we had a great game plan. I felt really good. And I also happened to have the third all-time passing leader in pro football history at the time, Henry Burris. So about a half hour, we're in structured warm-ups, half hour before the game, I come up to Henry and he's on the knee and the backup quarterback's taking the reps. And I look down at Henry and I say, "Are you okay, bro?" And he looks up at me with fear in his eyes. And he says, "Coach, I can't move. My knee has locked up." And you talk about feeling like going from that feeling that you were about to crush it to feeling absolutely crushed. You talk about adaptability, recoverability. I went and I pulled out the separate call sheet for the backup quarterback, right? And got ready to roll. But that's what started the Crush It framework after that, because I thought to myself, we've got to have a system. And I learned this early on in football. 50% of the teams win and 50% of the teams lose. So I had to measure success through a different lens. As an offensive coordinator, I might call a great game, but the defense may not play well that day, right? The defense may play great one week and the offense might play terrible, but we win. So I had to define it through a different lens, and that's where Crush It was originated. And so that formula, that framework, is really an acronym. And the C stands for courage, as we talked about earlier. The R stands for resilience. And those are the first two. They're the ticket into the arena. They don't guarantee anything else. They just get you into the arena, onto the field. But if you really want to get to the next level, right, onto the podiums, figuratively speaking, in the Olympics, you have to develop the U, which is you have to become unstoppable with your identity and your mindset. The S in Crush It stands for showing up, your energy, your presence, your how you connect with others. It's all about how you show up every day, every moment. The H stands for the high performance habits. And look, the world's best performers in any endeavor, they've developed some really successful habits. The I stands for internal discipline, and the T stands for tenacity. And so each principle will help you solve problems in your life alone. But collectively, it is a system and a framework for integrated growth and development to get to that highest level. So if you're unstoppable, you're showing up in your habits, you're on the podium. But the real drivers are that discipline and that tenacity. They get you to the top of the podium. So it's a really cool framework. But what I loved about it, Ian, was that I wanted to give something that, okay, what does Crush It look like as a leader? And so we changed the acronym. You're connecting, you're reliable, you're unifying, so on and so forth. What does crushing it in your workouts look like as a mom, as a dad? So the idea is that if I can give you a little seed or a nugget that you can take and plant in a different area of your life and let it grow, and you get to define what Crush It looks like in the different aspects of your life. And so that's where the framework started.
I love that. I love that it's a framework that's adaptable to the person and or the situation. Yeah, that is key. Now, I want to also ask you, Jaime, because I know that you also talk about energy management and how to sustain focus in action. And I think that a lot of people need to understand this principle, because a lot of us just feel exhausted.
Yeah.
And we are maybe taking a lot of action, but not making a lot of progress, and we're not putting our energy in the right places. So I know that the program that we went through, Ben Newman talks a lot about intentional focus. And up until that point, I didn't know there was a difference between focus and intentional focus.
Yeah.
The way that he breaks it down and explains it, it totally makes sense. But I love how you talk about energy management to sustain focus and action. I was hoping you could kind of unpack that for us.
Yeah, energy is really the resource that is the most important. Everybody says, wish I had more time. Time is limited. We all have the same. That's never going to change. But our energy is something that we can purposefully manage. And there's a couple components, and I'll break it down this way. First of all, I think energy is broken down into 4 categories. Our physical energy, our emotional energy, our ability to generate positive emotions, interact with others, our mental energy, the capacity to make decisions, to do deep thinking, to focus, to concentrate, to problem solve. And then spiritual energy. And when I bring spiritual energy in, I talking a lot about just connection to something outside yourself. For some people, it's faith. For other people, it's just, being connected to nature. Here's what's important in understanding energy, though. We'll take you through a process so you understand which energy is most important for you to protect. Here's what I mean by that. If my emotional energy gets drained, my mental energy, my ability to focus goes way down. My physical energy goes way down. But it's not like that for everybody. For some people, if their mental energy suffers, they don't get enough sleep, so they can't concentrate deeply. They feel poorly about themselves. When they feel like they can't get things done, their physical energy drops. So I think it's the first part is understanding which energy is most important to you. That's the first part. The second part, if you're going to talk about energy and how to manage it, is being really in tune to what drains it. Conversations. We live in a distracted world. And I'll share this number with you. It's an amazing number. If you're doing work and you get a text message and you respond, on average, research shows it takes 24 minutes and 18 seconds to regain your focus. So we look at all these energy drains going from one meeting to the next with no transition, right? And so we have to learn how to know what drains our energy. And then the last component of energy, which, and again, Drew Brees is a great example. I was blessed to be in meetings with him, Tom Brady, and a lot of other elite athletes, is the ability to truly know how you generate energy. See, there's a great expression, and it's not mine. The power plant doesn't have energy. It generates energy. So how do you purposefully recharge daily, weekly, monthly? How do you generate energy? For Drew Brees, it was all about connecting with people. His energy was replenished. For other people, it might be, I need to get out in nature. I need to go walk. I need to read a book. But when you talk about energy management, it's not just how you use your energy, it's how you replenish it. And I think that's when we spend a lot of time, because we don't really think about energy in that way. We just say, man, I'm just really tired today.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And I think that is that's such an interesting way to think about it. And you're right. We do need to think about how we can protect our energy, because life itself gives so many opportunities for your energy to be sucked away. And if we're not paying attention, we will be depleted. And then, like you said, wonder why, man, yeah, I am just so tired today. And the other side of that, like you said, and that's so important as well, is to protect your energy, what you need, what you find is most important for you to be able to be the best version of yourself. What energy do you need to have the most of?
And it's such because we've all had those days where we're on fire and you're like, I don't know what was different. See, the key in coaching is to tap you into what was different, rather than just saying, I was in flow for like 2 weeks and then, man, I was getting so much stuff done. Well, what happened? Right. And most of us don't know. But I think if we use the analogy, or we develop the mindset that energy is like a bank account, right? And we have to think about it this way. A lot of times we withdraw energy in double digits, but deposit it back in single digits.
Right.
So over time, we just get depleted and depleted and depleted and depleted. And we find ourselves at some point on a really low point. So are we replenishing in double digits or triple digits so we can have that sustained consistency over a long period of time? That's the key.
Right. What would you say are some steps or some keys or some ways for individuals who may be listening to figure out how to make those deposits back into your energy bank?
Yeah, great question. I think the deposits back into your energy bank are unique to you. What fills your soul back up? What makes you happy? Is it playing the guitar? Is it, for a lot of us, it's getting a workout in, right? But I challenge people to go deeper. Okay, if you were building a recharge plan with intentional focus, like we talked about earlier, what would be on there? A new restaurant every 2 weeks, or if you go out a lot, a change of scenery every 90 days, getting out in nature. For a lot of people, they're replenished by those type of things. So I think you have to do some soul searching, into what fills me back up. For some people, it might be the creative part of drawing and engaging. It's a very, very unique individual type formula that we have to tap into, right? Because that formula is what's going to drive us. But I had another thought, but it'll come back to me. So, I obviously I'm depleted on energy because I can't focus on my thought from 30 seconds ago. So, but I also think it's some of the things that we do that we know about that we don't follow. Are we getting 8 hours of sleep?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
A tactical tool, and there's a reason why on the sleep portion of it. I never understood this, but in the first 4 hours of sleep, 80% of the replenishment or the benefit of sleep goes to our bodies. Only 20% goes to our brain. In the last 4 hours of the sleep cycle, it flips. So 80% goes to replenish our brain and only 20% to our body. So imagine when we get 6 hours of sleep, we've deprived our brain from recovering fully. And thus we've all felt it. I feel tired. I feel fatigued. I can't concentrate. You make a decision. I'm tapped.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to understand why that cycle of sleep is so important, that helped. I'll share with you one last thing that I know my clients hate, but I'll throw it out there. It's so important. You talk about energy drains and transitions. When I first take on a client, I say, you're going to check your email 3 times a day only. And I get pushback, Ian, on this. It's that first thing in the morning, you're checking it for what you need and what you have to send out. That's it. Midday, you can check it once for what you need or what's a must to send out. And then at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, you set the time. We're gonna block an hour, 45 minutes, 30 minutes to just send, read, and receive emails, because that's when our mental capacity is lower and we don't need those cognitive resources, right? When we're sending, receiving, okay, that's a forward, okay, that I'm going to send that out. So
Right.
a tactical tool so that we can do our best work when we're the freshest. And for a lot of people, that's in the morning hour. But I get tons of pushback on that. I'm not going to lie. So, but it is effective.
I love that so much because that speaks to, again, there are so many people, myself included. I'm also guilty of this, of getting caught up in those emails, and again, taking action, but not making any progress really during, throughout the first couple hours of my day. And that is when, like you mentioned, that's when I'm the most creative. That's when I'm the freshest. That's when I'm going to have the best ideas. But so there's some days where I get caught up in that email scroll, and I love that.
And you know what I do? I bring in some principles from football into this. And I don't know why we don't do this. But in football, teams have 3 timeouts in the first half and 3 timeouts in the second half. And when do we take a timeout? When there's confusion, when we're being ineffective, right? We just say, timeout, hold on a second. When do we just say timeout during the middle of the day and say, okay, let's just pause here for a minute. I'm not on course. I'm distracted. I'm focusing. And the other thing I use from football is there's a halftime in every game where you look back and you say, okay, what adjustments do we need to make? How many of us take a halftime in the middle of the day and say, how has the first half of my day gone? Oh, man, it got derailed. All right, I got 3 phone calls. Okay, let's make adjustments for the second half of the day. And I literally coach clients to just take a halftime to assess the day and how it's going. Not the workload, but just how's the day going? Okay, because with that intentional focus, they can get back on track. So at the end of the day, don't feel like, oh, today was a wasted day, right? We make the adjustments so that we make the second half productive, right? And so I use those 2 tools from coaching for years. And I think a lot of businesses would benefit from occasionally saying, hey, time out. Let's think about this.
Absolutely. Wow. Jaime, so many nuggets and pearls of wisdom. I'm finding myself wishing that we could just talk all day, but I know that is not the case. I know you're a very busy man, but I want to make sure that our viewers and our listeners know where to find out more about the Crush It and ICE methods, and where they can pick up your book, and where they can get more information, or even get in contact with you about your coaching and your speaking.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My website has a lot of information, but I'm more about connection. So if somebody wants to reach out and just say, "Hey, let's connect for 15 minutes," I'm very open to that. We have a lot of resources in place. The book is one of them. They can find it at Amazon. Uh, there's a 50-day crush it journey. It's a video every day, 5 to 6 minutes, and then an additional 3 to 4 minutes. The idea is that we're going to do personal growth for 10 minutes a day, every day, and you'll learn the crush it principles, but we'll also be building patterns so that we build the habits of consistency, which there's some research to it that's done there. So there's that program. And then I'm always available for some one-on-one coaching. I do have limited windows, but you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on the website, and you can share my information, Ian, as you see fit.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely put links to all of that in the show notes. And Jaime, I just want to thank you again for joining us today. Again, so many pearls of wisdom and so much knowledge you have dropped. And I know that our listeners and viewers can glean some great ideas from today's conversation. So thank you once again for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me on, Ian. Let's continue this journey together, because I know we want to continue to change people's lives, and that's what you and I are united in. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So there it is. Another great episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast. You know how we always end, and that is to stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything. We'll see you next time. Awesome. I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers for tuning into this episode. And as we always say, stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything. We'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in and being part of the Positive Persistence family. We're having a great time creating this content, and we truly hope it inspires you to embrace positivity and persistence in your own journey. If this podcast episode inspired you or entertained you, scroll down, hit those stars, and leave a comment or two. Your 5-star reviews and shares encourage us and help us grow the show. So until next time, stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything.